again, first off, you have to be made aware that there's an issue because you can't take for granted. I mean, we're talking about the Swiss cheese model, right?
Right.
Where things fall through the holes, and if all of the holes align, then you have a problem. Well, this is in my mind, a prime example of that. In that, okay, if the cabin crew, first of all, if the passenger doesn't bring it to the cabin crew's attention, it just made it through one hole.
Right.
If the cabin crew is made aware of it, but they don't report it to the flight crew, there's another hole. It just made it through two holes. If it makes its way to the flight crew and they ignore it, or they don't record it or whatever, or they just simply don't do anything about it, they say, well, that's normal. Well, that's another hole.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it gets to the maintenance. And if as a maintenance provider, if I'm not made aware that there's an issue, then I take for granted that I have a serviceable aircraft to start with.
Hi everyone, I'm Annalisa from C.A.C. Global Solutions. Welcome to another episode of Storytime with Brett. And today, Brett and we would like to talk about something that we saw recently on social media, and that we thought it was a good case study, and offer our perspectives, our comments and thoughts on it. So, Brett, you actually brought this to my attention some time ago, and it was a video, and the video was showing, it appeared to be taken by a passenger on a big jet, so I suppose an airline. And the video showed a number of fasteners along the wing that were loose, were vibrating, so obviously they were not tightened properly. So this to me is very interesting. I'm not sure, we don't know exactly when this video was taken, but I think it's still very actual. And I would like to go through different aspects of it with you under, a passenger point of view, flight attendant point of view, crew point of view, and under maintenance, airworthiness, and also under an aviation safety inspector point of view of this issue, because we can't avoid to say that it's kind of an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the passenger. So if you were a passenger and you are seeing this, what would be your reaction?
So typically with these story times, we like to talk about events that we've experienced. Okay. And this particular instance, I think, is one that we've all experienced as passengers, as flight attendants, as flight crew, as maintainers and regulators. And so I think this is a great one that everybody should be able to, it should resonate with everybody, right? So as a passenger, I mean, the video that we saw was basically looking out the window over the wing, and there were a bunch of screws and other potential fasteners, maybe cam locks or Zeus fasteners that typically are spring loaded and are subject to some vibration. But it was clear from all of these fasteners, and had to been a dozen of them, right, that were sitting there and just fluttering in the breeze, so to speak. And I don't know. I mean, the story that went along with this video talked about strict regulatory standards and engineering design.
Multiple layers of redundancy.
Right. A number of things, and all of those aspects are true, but from a passenger perspective, you're not an aviation professional. You may have experienced it. You may be a frequent flyer, and you may have seen things of this nature in the past, or you might be a new flyer and looking out the window thinking the airplane's coming apart, right? So you can't just tell somebody that these are normal things. And in fact, it really depends on your perspective as to whether they may be normal or not. Excuse me. But certainly as a passenger, if I saw something like that as a new flyer or even as a frequent flyer, I would bring it to the cabin crew's attention, because you can't just assume that, oh, that's normal. You can't just assume that, well, they know about it, it'll be taken care of. You can't make any of those assumptions. All you know is you see something, and if it doesn't look right to you, maybe you should bring it to somebody else's attention, right? So you bring it to the cabin crew's attention. That's your point of contact on the flight. So the cabin crew, they've been taught that if there's an issue with the aircraft, to report it to the flight crew. Okay, so the flight crew should be made aware of this. So now we're talking about the cabin crew's perspective. Somebody's brought something to their attention that is a potential issue with the aircraft. Now, again, the cabin crew, they may have seen issues like this before, they may not have seen issues like this before, but they're not maintenance professionals, they're not flight crew, they are cabin crew. There's been something that's been reported to them, and their responsibility is to pass that on to the flight crew. Inevitably or ultimately, the pilot in command is responsible for the aircraft. They have the responsibility to determine if the aircraft is safe for flight, safe for continued flight.
Mhm.
So if there's a potential problem with the aircraft, the crew need to be made aware of that. It might be that they were aware of it before the flight and it's been explained to them that it's acceptable, and so they're continuing. They may want to come back into the cabin, look out the window for themselves to see what it is you're talking about, and then make a determination of whether, if it's an engine cowl that's coming open, they may decide that we need to land at soonest opportunity. If it's something like these loose fasteners, clearly it didn't just happen. They've been like this for a while. And so they may decide that it's safe to continue flight. They might decide that as one of the comments referred to, and this is good because it's one more perspective. But one of the comments was that it's safe for flight, continue on, and have it repaired at first opportunity, whatever the case might be. And they even suggested that you might want to avoid turbulence and such. And these are all things that I've seen in the past where the type certificate holder has authorized, or not authorized, but said that an aircraft would be safe for flight with panels missing, fasteners missing, whatever the case might be, so long as you avoid turbulence or different things. And there are different ways the crews are taught to avoid these situations. So, but they can't make those decisions if they're not made aware of the issue with the aircraft, right? So it's important that they get reported.
Yeah. So the first message here is that to report, because like we often say with defects, don't say the defect to the first maintenance engineer that comes your way, just verbally, or give a sticky note, just write it down in the logbook. So now I have a couple of comments on this. So first of all, I did appreciate the comment that avoid turbulence, ask ATC to put you on a flight level that you're not going to have turbulence, even though I have a couple of comments on it. First of all, you can't control weather that well. And the other question is, okay, let's say that the pilot, the flight crew made the determination that, okay, we can fly and we can go to our final destination, and at final destination there is bad weather. What do you do? Is it still safe to land, or do you have to go to an alternate? And another food for thought, when we first talked about this, I made the comment that, I think the right procedure would be, one possible procedure would be for the flight crew to take a picture, to take a video, and contact maintenance, because to me that is a maintenance issue. True that the pilot in command has the final say on how, if to continue the flight or not. But to me, that maintenance should be made aware right away and consult to determine the best solution. So what are your thoughts on these two comments?
Okay, well, so a couple of things there. First of all, absolutely, the flight crew needs to make a record of it. That's in the tech log for the aircraft. So because when the aircraft reaches its destination, whether it be its final destination or its deviated destination, the flight crew needs, or the maintenance crew needs to be made aware of this, and the airworthiness people have to be made aware of this. So the formal way of doing that is entering it in the technical record or logbook for the aircraft. So that's a must. And you, as a flight crew, you can't take for granted that, well, they'll know about it or they'll catch it on their daily inspection at the next base. I mean, these fasteners, for instance, were on the top, clearly on the top side of the wing. And with a large aircraft on a daily inspection, the maintenance crew will do their walk around. They may get a ladder and look up on top of the wing. They may not. It could be that in flight, obviously there's airflow over the wing and there's disruption, and these things are shown to be vibrating. Whereas standing on the ground on a ladder and you look over the wing, they're all resting. They're sitting where they're supposed to be. There's nothing to see there, right? And so it's overlooked and you move on. If it goes in the logbook, now there's direction that, okay, there's a potential issue. They're not saying that there is an issue, but there's a potential issue. Maintenance now is made aware of it and has the opportunity to go out and investigate further and determine whether there actually is an issue or not, right? But and to your point about taking a photo or video, in today's world, absolutely. If we have the technology, let's use it, right? And contacting maintenance while in flight and getting their opinion on what the issue is, absolutely. If the technology and the infrastructure within the airline supports that, absolutely. It's not always the case, you know. Now we're talking about some big boy airlines with advanced systems and stuff, but certainly if it's available, if there's an issue with the aircraft, you can pass that on by video, by photo, or even through text message and get some input on that. Because, I mean, yes, the pilots are well versed with their machine, what it looks like and what it should look like. And if it doesn't, well, now they need to make a judgment call. But if it's something of a serious nature, and now it becomes subjective, right? Then they may want to consult with maintenance and get an idea of whether they should be considering landing at the next opportunity or whether they can continue to their destination.
Right. Yeah. Well, in regards to, you know, flight operations and what a pilot would do, we're a little limited because, I mean, I'm not a pilot. You know,
right.
I'm the pilot of the Sunday afternoon that, you know, goes just for a quick trip. So I personally don't have that kind of expertise to comment, but those were just few thoughts that we thought they were good to share. So under a maintenance point of view and continuing airworthiness management. So this case, it's tricky because I think it's also not very good for the airline, because when you see something like that, you go, whether you are a passenger or an aviation professionals, you go, okay, so how many other things they missed, how many other things they forgot to tighten, you know. So under a maintenance perspective, let's say that you've been you were an aircraft maintenance engineer. So let's say that you get the call that this aircraft is coming in with this potential issue, you know, that needs to be evaluated. So somebody have to, once the defect is known, to determine if it is a serious one, if it needs to be assessed and taken care of right away, or we have some cycles to go. So how would you go with it? How would you manage it?
Well, again, you know, first off, you have to be made aware that there's an issue, because you can't take for granted. I mean, we're talking about the Swiss cheese model, right?
Right.
Where things fall through the holes, and if all of the holes align, then you have a problem. Well, this is in my mind, a prime example of that, in that, okay, if the cabin crew, first of all, if the passenger doesn't bring it to the cabin crew's attention, it just made it through one hole. If the cabin crew is made aware of it, but they don't report it to the flight crew, there's another hole. It just made it through two holes. If it makes its way to the flight crew and they ignore it, or they don't record it or whatever, or they just simply don't do anything about it, they say, well, that's normal. Well, that's another hole. And so now it gets to the maintenance. And if as a maintenance provider, if I'm not made aware that there's an issue, then I take for granted that I have a serviceable aircraft to start with. I'm going to check it over in my daily inspection or whatever the case might be, to ensure that it continues to be serviceable. And again, as I mentioned, you know, there may be circumstances where this is only evidenced in flight and sitting on the ground. I can't tell through a general visual inspection that there's a problem here. So absolutely, it has to be reported. Now, once it's reported, I have the opportunity to go out and look at it, at what it is they're talking about. And again, pictures, videos, whatever, speak 1,000 words, right? So that's great to have, but it's a luxury. Usually you're just, if you're lucky, you get a description of the general area where the issue lies in a case like this. So you go out and you do an assessment on it. It could be that the fastener's loose, it's a screw, you put a screwdriver on it, a quarter turn, and the problem's gone, right? It could be that you put screwdrivers on them, you try to tighten all the fasteners and they won't tighten anymore. So, I mean, you start doing troubleshooting, right?
Right.
You may pull the screws. It might be that somebody installed too long the screws and they're not being you can't install them properly. So it could be something simple like that, but it could even be something that where now all of a sudden, because they were loose for so long, they've been smoking, which means that there's been some rubbing and some friction, and the airflow over them is causing black streaks. But what comes also with that is it could be it's a place of propagation for cracking. So it could be the cracks are starting to come from those. And again, it could be tertiary or non-structural, or it might be structural. You don't know, right?
Under an inspector point of view, so let's say that you come across this video. What would be your considerations about
so the first things that cross my mind in watching a video like this is it didn't just happen. It's been like that for a while. Whoever's been doing the maintenance inspections, and this comes back to some of the comments that were made that aircraft are safe because they have redundancy and they're subject to rigorous maintenance inspections and such. Well, to me as a regulator, when I see this, I suggest that the maintenance program, the maintenance procedures that are being accomplished are not being done to the standard that they're supposed to be. For starters. The rigorous inspection is not as rigorous as what it should be. And also you can't help but what comes to your mind is, okay, if they're overlooking something as obvious as this and it's in your face, what is it that's more critical that they're also overlooking?
Yeah, because I can see two scenarios at the top of my head. One that they did a big check and they loosened the spanners, they put it back together, and somebody forgot to tighten the screws. Yeah. Or worse, second scenario number 2, which is the worst, is like you said, maybe those fasteners were like that for a long time and nobody caught it, and this is
right. And you just can't take those things for granted, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in aviation, in human factors in aviation, we talk about the dirty dozen, right? There's 12 potential areas for causing issues that human factors, these are human factor issues that can lead to and have been proven to lead to accidents, incidents, and such. And right off when I saw this, it was interesting because right underneath it was a post about human factors in the dirty dozen, right? I showed you that, and a number of aspects that live in those dirty dozen came to light. I mean, there's complacency. If the cabin crew or the flight crew don't say or do anything about it, they're being complacent. There's normal, what becomes normal. If the flight crew sees that all the time, or maintenance sees that and they go, oh yeah, that's normal. You're taking for granted that that's a situation that is normal, and you're creating, with every time you do that, you're creating a new norm. There's all kinds of different issues that are human factors that have to be taken into account in a situation like this. And this is one of the biggest aspects to aviation safety today, is taking into account the human factor. I mean, technology with aircraft has gotten so far advanced that in a vast number of the cases where there are accidents or incidents, it boils down to overlooking something. It boils down to a procedure not being followed, or people taking things for granted, whatever the case might be. I mean, there have been crashes that have taken place because situations existed that were accepted as, well, that's normal for that aircraft. Don't worry about it, And it turns out maybe it wasn't normal. So
Right.
things of that nature. And it's not for me as a passenger or me as a flight crew, I'm sorry, as the cabin crew, to make that call. I'm not a professional to determine the airworthiness of an aircraft. Flight crew, they're able to determine airworthiness of an aircraft, but when they see something like that, it's definitely, obviously, in their mind, should register as a defect with the aircraft. So that needs to be investigated beyond their ability and or capability. In the air, they can't go out there and check that.
Of course.
They land on the ground. It's not their place to go out and check it and determine whether it's serviceable or not. They are to employ the systems that are in place to ensure safety, and that's report it to maintenance. Now maintenance can go out and make that determination.
Well, that's the reason why I wanted to make a video, which I believe is more appropriate in this case, because social media is great to share things and quick comments and quick thoughts, but there is more that meets the eye in this particular case, in this particular defect, that you can put in a comment, or even an article is not going to be enough to comment on all of these aspects, because it's not just a matter of oh, don't worry about it, it's okay, it's the system in behind that have allowed or is going to allow that to pass and not be taken care of, particularly in a time and age in aviation where the word safety is on everybody's mouth. And we just had a conversation with a podcast, one of our guests at the podcast that was saying, safety, you are compliant, you take care of compliance. Now, what is the next step? The step is safety, and see what may come your way. But if we don't take care of the daily things, like fastener loose on a wing, well, that it's already a problem right there.
Well, it is, and this goes beyond what a pilot might think is airworthy, because airworthiness is maintaining the aircraft to the type certificate's original standard, and to ensure that it's maintained for its scheduled maintenance and such. Well, okay, it's scheduled maintenance. That's usually a given, particularly in a airline environment. But to maintain type, for a loose fastener, the maintenance manual is how you maintain type. Okay, maintenance manual is not going to tell you that it's okay to fly an aircraft with the loose fastener. The maintenance manual is going to tell you to secure those fasteners. So that's not to say that it renders the aircraft unsafe, but now it's outside potentially the manufacturer's specifications. So what happens there then is now airworthiness, or the maintainer, if they're responsible for airworthiness, is required to contact the type certificate holder, the manufacturer of the aircraft, and determine whether the aircraft is safe or not. I mean, there are other mechanisms in place as well. There's configuration deviation lists that might say it's okay to go without fasteners or whatever, and you have to put some speed tape over top, and it's good for 10 flights or whatever the case might be. There are all kinds of different circumstances, but that's beyond the maintenance manual. That requires a maintenance action of sorts, and it requires airworthiness to follow up to make sure that action is accomplished within a certain period of time.
Yeah, because the fact that something might be within limits does not mean that you can kind of sit there and forget about it. And the major thing that we've been trying to explain through the work we're doing, our posts, the book, the podcast, is that there is a system. And aviation is made of complex processes, and everybody has their own role. The pilot has its role. We are very much segmented, but at the end of the day, there is something that is called continuing airworthiness that kind of wrap all these aspects together: flight, maintenance, so that we can see the big picture. We can zoom out and see the big picture and how all of these little pieces affect one another. And this is the message that I would like to communicate, that it's not only a matter of fastener being loose, is okay, what is the system doing? Do we have a problem with maintenance? Why the procedure wasn't followed? Does more training needs to be given to the people who are doing this job? Where is where in the chain, we are all chained together, okay, which part of the chain is weak? Right, because this is where at the end safety really actually comes in.
Safety, and you'll hear it and see it all over the place. Safety is everybody's responsibility. So I mean, whether you're a passenger and you see something, I mean, see something, say something. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I see this, is that okay? Because if the cabin crew is familiar with the issue and they say, yeah, the captain's aware, it's whatever the case might be, then at least the passenger's done their part. The cabin crew, if they need to report it, well, they need to do their part. Everybody needs to do their part. And if everybody is, great. If they're not, then we have to identify where the problems lie and go back again, like you just pointed out, to the system and employ different fixes to make sure the system is doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like the post that we saw mentioned, safety isn't accidental. It's because everybody involved is doing what they are supposed to.
Right, and it said there are rigorous systems. There are rigorous systems, but you're part of that system.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are. And if you're not doing your part, then the system is not so rigorous.
Yeah, okay, well, good. Now, I just wanted to bring this to the attention of aviation professionals, because it's not just simply for us, at least, that we are doing this kind of work. Just not, okay, just put a piece of speed tape and move on. There is again a system behind that is affected by all of this, and it's important to understand that it's a systematic problem.
Yeah. And, I mean, the example of the speed tape may be the fix. There's no way of saying, I mean, these are very specific circumstances, and you have to know that, but you just can't take things for granted.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thank you for sharing your perspective on this. I think it was a really good example, because it's very practical, and
well, it really struck a chord with me, because the initial comments were that it's not anything to worry about because there are systems in place and it'll all get taken care of. But that's one of the first mistakes, is thinking that it's not really something to concern yourself with.
Well, and you have to wonder what the system is doing, because obviously there is no rigorous check, because otherwise I wouldn't have a bunch of fasteners loose on
as a trained professional, I would argue that you're absolutely right. They're rigorous checks are not being done.
Yeah, I mean, what I see and what you're saying don't match, right? So that's why I thought it was a good example to bring to the attention of people. Okay, well, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time for another episode. And thank you for joining us today. If you like this kind of content, please consider to like, subscribe, and share, and check out all the other videos of Storytime with Brett episodes that we have on our channel. And thank you so much. Have a great day, and see you soon. Bye.